This morning I was scrolling my TikTok and I see somebody talking about a proposal for a 50-year mortgage. And I almost threw my phone out the window.
I will never get on board with a 50-year mortgage, period. It's a terrible idea for the American consumer.
People all over the country are struggling to afford homes, and now Donald Trump says he's found the fix, a 50-year mortgage. But some worry that this solution could make the housing crisis even worse. Not everyone thinks this is a bad idea. Here's why.
Everyone's freaking out about the 50-year mortgage that just dropped, but I think it's pretty genius. And if you're new here, I'm Theoni the lender. I've been a lender for 10 years. I help people every single day from this app buy, sell, and refinance. Let's get into this because I have such an interesting take on this that most loan officers do not share. And I'll start by saying that they don't share the same idea because they're loan officers, not loan advisors like I am. Everyone keeps talking about the amount of interest that you're about to pay over 50 years. And I will say it is pretty crazy. I saw an example for a $400,000 house that it was like 1.7 million in interest or something crazy if you kept that loan for 50 years. But what most people are missing is that the average homeowner in America only lives in their home for 11 years. And that is to say they live there, but they're likely going to refinance the terms of that mortgage. Like the likelihood of you having a mortgage that you get today for 30 years is very low, even if you live in that home for 30 years. And that's because you're going to do a cash out refinance. The rates are going to come down. So you're going to refinance. And every time you refinance, like right now, I'm taking people from a 30-year term to like a 20 or 15-year term. So the idea behind a 50-year mortgage isn't because we want you to be in this house for 50 years. I think that's actually insane that people are even in the same loan terms for even 30 years. The idea is that it gives you breathing room to qualify for a house. And that's the problem that we're facing right now. People cannot qualify. Yes, the savings is like maybe $200 difference from a 50-year to a 30-year, but that $200 difference actually makes a difference when it comes to qualifying for a mortgage.
If someone pulls cash out of their home without a real plan, it can go bad fast, especially if the refinance doesn't even lower their monthly payment. That can sometimes be a sign that the numbers simply don't work. And honestly, there's nothing wrong with staying in a 30-year mortgage for a long time or even for the duration of the loan. The only time refinancing can sometimes make sense is when your payment actually drops without adding more years of debt on the back end of the loan. Also, if an extra $200 a month is the only way you qualify for a house, that's usually a red flag. So a quick history lesson. Before the 1930s, mortgages were short, like 3 to 5 years, and ended up with a huge balloon payment. So you had to finance constantly or come up with a giant lump sum. It wasn't until the Federal Housing Administration, or FHA, was created in 1934 that longer and more stable mortgages became normal. That's how the 30-year mortgage became the standard. And now we're talking about 50-year mortgages. There's a concerning part of this that a lot of people aren't thinking about. Let's take a look.
You mean to tell me that the average age of a home buyer is 40 years old? But if we were to introduce a 50-year mortgage, that person is expected to pay off their mortgage when they are 90 years old. Not only that, but this is crazy, because if you were to buy your house, if you were looking for something out in like the $400,000 range, by the time that 50 years is over, you would have paid $863,000. That is more than double of the price that you bought the house for. There's actually a reason why houses do not have more than a 30-year mortgage on it. Who does this benefit? This actually will benefit the banks. That benefits the banks. But this isn't going to benefit average home buyers. A 50-year mortgage? That is crazy.
This is real. Imagine buying your first home at 40 years old and making payments until you're 90, if you even get to that age. A 50-year mortgage stretches the timeline in a way that most people never think about. I will say one good thing about this whole conversation is that people are finally looking at the total cost of a home, not just the down payment and not just the monthly mortgage bill. The reality of it is when you stretch out a loan that long, the interest becomes massive. It's sobering to think about, and I honestly hope it pushes people people to pay off their mortgages sooner or simply buy a less expensive home. And she's right. If 50-year mortgages become available, the banks will absolutely benefit, especially if there are people who do it for the whole 50 years. From a math standpoint, I don't see why somebody would honestly want to do this. And to me, it just seems illogical. But of course, we're going to have people who say, well, they could refinance later, but there's no guarantee that refinancing will make sense, and refinancing is not free. So do you think it's a bad idea to buy a home assuming that you can refinance later to make it more affordable? Let me know what you think. To really understand the potential impact of this, we need to look at a visual example. Let's check it out.
In case you haven't heard the news, something major is being proposed. So that's a 50-year mortgage, okay? Traditionally, we look at 30-year mortgage options, but the White House is proposing a 50-year option. And you may be thinking, that's going to help save me money at the end of the day. What does that look like? Well, I'm glad you asked because I'm going to share it with you. So let's take a $400,000 loan on a 30-year term at 6.5%. You're paying just over $2,500 a month for your principal and interest. However, if we do that on a 50-year term, you're about $2,254, which saves you about $273 a month. And you would think that's great. And you might be saying, well, Jordan, that's wonderful. Like, that's a good chunk of money to help me save every month. And you would be right. However, let me give you a little bit more information. So let's look at the whole picture. On a 30-year mortgage, in total, you would pay roughly $910,000. The interest portion of that $910,000 would be about $510,000, okay? However, if you look at a 50-year term, $952,000 is going towards interest, which is a difference of $442,000. At the end of the day, if purchasing a home is on your list of things that you want to do in this life, then I am for sure the person to call and help you with that. However, if a 50-year mortgage gets passed, and this is what the numbers look like, which they are because I help people every day, saving $273 a month to then pay an extra $442,000 for the life of the loan is ridiculous.
The difference in total interest paid on a 50-year mortgage is mind-blowing. When you have a loan like that, the bank makes significantly more money, and most buyers don't realize how much extra they would pay. This is why it's important to buy a home with a clear plan. How long do you want to stay? Is paying off the home quickly important to you? Are you comfortable with the timeline? These are some of the questions that matter. At the end of the day, real estate is just a numbers game. The payment has to make sense. The total cost has to make sense, and the home has to be affordable. To make that easier, I created a free home affordability calculator. It gives you an estimate of your potential price range, and there's a short video that walks you through how to use it. If you're interested, the link to that is in the pinned comment. So would you ever consider a 50-year mortgage? I'd love to hear your thoughts. A lot of us were shocked to hear about the possibility of a 50-year mortgage, and this next clip is no different.
This morning I was scrolling my TikTok and I see somebody talking about a proposal for a 50-year mortgage. And I almost threw my phone out the window. Because 50 years? It's like we're trying to drag ourselves into some alternate reality where affordability is a distant memory. We're working 40 hours a week at a respectable office job and owning a home don't even go in the same sentence together. But soon they can for the low, low price of 5 decades. Let's just take a look at these numbers. Assuming you get the same interest rate, which you probably won't because you're getting a longer term loan, you're paying a lot more in interest. And then the monthly payment wouldn't even be significantly different. I'm just saying, man, today is 50-year mortgages. Tomorrow is 15-year car loans. Next thing you know, everything you own is going to be projected to be paid off in 2075. But hey, you decide whether it's a good or bad thing. That's not my place. I'm just giving you the facts. And one thing about these facts and these numbers, they don't lie.
That introduction was hilarious, and he was genuinely shocked, like many of us. And honestly, a lot of people feel the same way when they hear the term 50-year mortgage. There really was a time when a basic job could get you a home, especially for boomers, Gen X, and older millennials. Unfortunately, those days are gone, but it's not hopeless. We just have to approach homeownership differently and be more creative. And people forget, even with a 30-year mortgage, if you pay for it over the full term of the loan instead of paying it off sooner, the total cost becomes drastically higher. Stretching it to 50 years obviously takes that even further. And honestly, with how things are going, I would not be surprised if 15-year car loans become a thing. I mean, there's already 7-year and I'm seeing even 8-year loans. So unfortunately, anything is possible. Do you have any hope that we'll get back to a time when an average job could buy a home almost anywhere? I'd love to hear your thoughts. This next clip brings up a hard truth that a lot of buyers don't want to hear. But first, I need that like and subscribe button. If you want to get better on real estate estate investing, you got to follow this channel.
I can get on here and say, if you hear a realtor try to spin a 50-year mortgage note like it's a good thing for you to run, don't walk in the opposite direction, but you won't listen. I've said multiple times that you all, as consumers, shop for the answer that you like best and not necessarily for the quality of the person that you're getting the information from. For example, right now, I can tell you, if you see that I offer a second opinion and you click the button to schedule a time with me to talk, I tell you what the answer is and point out what's wrong with the situation, and you still move forward with that other lender, you deserve everything that you get. You are going to shop for the answer that makes you feel a certain way. Buying something is an emotional decision and not a cognitive decision. Right now, today, I can tell you the way mortgage lending is structured, the longer the term is, the higher the rate is. So by the time we do all of the math on a 50-year mortgage, you're probably not going to save but maybe a little over $100 a month. And baby, if $100 a month is standing in between you and home ownership, you shouldn't be buying a house.
She's 100% right. Some people look for the answer they want to hear instead of the advice that they need. And this is why you need a realtor who's going to actually be honest with you. If you're looking to buy or sell in the next year, I'm a licensed realtor and can connect you with a great agent. If you're interested in that, the link is in the pinned comment. What she mentioned is why so many people end up house poor. These buyers are barely making it to the closing table and have almost nothing left after the down payment, closing cost, and moving expenses. Don't get me wrong. Owning a home is a great goal. You know I believe this. But it can be a nightmare if you're not financially prepared. You need at least 3 to 6 months of emergency savings, including the mortgage and household expenses. And your budget needs to actually work for you. With all the layoffs happening, you need cash set aside in case something unexpected happens. Do you believe too many people are financially unprepared when they're buying homes? Let me know what you think. So we've seen a lot of disagreement today, and this next guy is truly fired up about this thing.
I will never get on board with a 50-year mortgage. Period. It's a terrible idea for the American consumer. And yes, I have firsthand knowledge of this market as a real estate developer, home builder, and investor. Let me go over some of the comments and explain why they're totally off base. Interest-only loans are dangerous and basically usury. They led to the pre-2008 collapse of the real estate market and would truly usher in an era of predatory lending. It would force the system to create equity via asset speculation, which is just a terrible idea. Because what happens when it collapses? It always does. Just don't get a 50-year mortgage. Well, then don't get a 30-year. See how that works? And this one? Come on. The share of the market in 15-year mortgages has steadily gone down over the past century. People in the middle class used to use this because it makes the most sense financially. Also, the uber wealthy don't even use mortgages. Of course, nobody's forcing you to take out a loan. But Americans have built their nest egg via investing in real estate. That's part of the American dream. And when most people need a loan to access that part of the American dream, what is your alternative? Invest in the stock market, eh? Okay. Please look at an amortization schedule and get back to me. The first 7 or 10 years of a 50-year mortgage, there's zero principal accumulation. The entire basis here then would be essentially, I hope that the price of this home goes up. The historic home price appreciation in the United States is around 2%.
At the end of the day, if the 50-year mortgage becomes an option, nobody is forced to use it. It doesn't make sense that he's acting like people won't have a choice. And keep in mind, according to Redfin, the typical homeowner stays in their home for about 12 years. So even with a 50-year mortgage, it's unlikely that someone stays anywhere near the full term of the loan. And also, when you look at the numbers, you barely save anything monthly with a 50-year mortgage. Because of that, I honestly don't think most people will consider it. Maybe investors, but not regular buyers if you ask me. Also, a home is not a piggy bank. Homes appreciate slowly around 3 to 5% per year in typical circumstances. And most people won't walk away with a huge lump sum unless they stayed in the house long term. But I want to hear from you. Do you think he's overreacting, or is his reaction appropriate for what's being proposed? And he's not the only one who feels that way. This next clip brings up another angle.
Okay, a lot of y'all are too attached to the 50 years on this whole 50-year mortgage thing. That's not really the alarming part. Like, you don't A, have to take out a 50-year mortgage, and B, if you do, you don't have to take 50 years to pay it off. You can pay as much as you want on a principal and pay it off as soon as you want to, money allowing. The alarming thing is, instead of trying to solve the supply issue or the astonishing rise in home prices issue or the astonishing rise in home loan interest rates issue, they're like, oh, okay, well, things are too expensive and we're charging too much interest. So the solution is to just stretch the payment out for another 20 years beyond what is customary. And what is customary is already, I'm not going to say irresponsible, but like, it's not the best idea. If you can pull off a 15 or, Jesus, even a 10-year mortgage, that's ideal. But 50 is fucking crazy. But like I said, you don't have to take one out. And if you do, you can pay it off as soon as you want, okay? So you're not married to a 50-year mortgage. Everybody in my comments is freaking the fuck out. Oh, if I buy at 40, I won't pay it off till I'm 90. No, you'll pay it off as soon as you want to pay it off. But also, you're even with 30-year, even with 15-year, hardly anyone stays in the same mortgage for more than a small handful of years.
He's right. Even if the 50-year mortgage becomes an option, you don't have to take 50 years to pay it off. Just like with the 30-year mortgage, how fast you pay it is ultimately your choice. And when it comes to home supply, the real problem is local policy and restrictive zoning. Some cities limit where single-family homes and apartments can be built. That reduces supply and pushes the prices back up. If you want to pay your mortgage faster, there are a few strategies you can check out. The first is bi-weekly payments, one extra payment a year, or extra principal payments. If you get bonuses, tax refunds, or any cash windfalls, you can apply those to the balance as well. Do you think it's a good idea to pay off your mortgage early? And if you've been able to pay your mortgage early, let us know how you did it. A 50-year mortgage sounds simple, but once you break down the numbers, the long-term cost is hard to ignore. For some people, it looks like more affordability, but for most buyers, it just means paying way more interest for way longer. Here's the big takeaway. Buy a home that fits your budget and your long-term goals. A longer mortgage doesn't fix the real issue, which is making sure the payment works for you and that you're financially prepared. If you're looking to buy or sell in the next year and you're looking for someone who can help you make a good decision, I'm a licensed realtor and I can get you connected with a realtor in your area. If you're interested, the link to more information is in the pinned comment. And if you're trying to figure out what you can potentially afford, don't forget to use my free home affordability calculator. It gives you an estimate of a price range that could possibly work for you. And there's also a short video explaining how to use it. If you're interested in that, the link is in the pinned comment as well. Now that you know about the 50-year mortgage proposal, I want you to learn how to avoid bad home buying decisions. Check out this video right here.